Howdy. Nobody hands you a rulebook that says, deal with everything yourself. But for many men, that's exactly the message they hear growing up. Handle your own problems. Be the strong one. Don't let people see you struggle. Over time, those messages can become difficult to separate from our own beliefs. What starts as self-reliance can slowly turn into isolation, and asking for help can begin to feel less like a solution and more like a personal failure. Mental health challenges affect people from every background, but men are often less likely to seek support when they need it. According to a systematic review conducted by Yisha Sheikh and her colleagues, many young men report barriers such as stigma, fear of judgment, and social expectations when considering whether to seek mental health support. The interesting thing is that his issue rarely affects only one person. When someone struggles in silence, the effects often extend to the people closest to them and to the institutions trying to provide support. To better understand this issue, it's important to examine the perspectives of the different stakeholders whose lives are shaped by it. One of the biggest themes that appear throughout research on men's mental health is the idea of self-reliance. Many men grow up hearing messages that encourage toughness, independence, and emotional control. Those messages can come from parents, coaches, social media, friends, or simply the culture around them. The message often sounds familiar. Handle your own problems and be the fixer. According to Sarah Brunning, many men worry that seeking help will be seen as weakness or as proof that they can't manage their own lives. The interesting thing is that these beliefs don't usually come from one single source. They build over time. When you hear the same message long enough, you stop questioning it. Eventually, the expectation to be independent can become part of your identity. Asking for help begins to feel less like finding a solution and more like admitting you failed. Sarah Mackenzie's research on men's experiences with mental health stigma found that many men continue to experience pressure to appear strong, self-reliant, and emotionally in control. As a result, some men choose to keep their struggles private. Others convince themselves that their problems aren't serious enough to deserve attention. Some simply hope that things will get better on their own. But independence and isolation are not the same thing. Mental health struggles rarely disappear simply because they're ignored. And while these barriers directly affect men, the effects rarely stop there. They have then begin to ripple apart and outward to the people who care about them most. One of the biggest misconceptions about mental health is that it's only an individual issue. In reality, very few people struggle completely alone. Family members, friends, and romantic partners are often the first people to notice when something is wrong. They may begin to notice changes in behavior, mood, communication, or motivation long before professional help is even considered. The difficult part is that they often want to help, but they don't know how. Imagine watching someone you care about struggle while they continue insisting that everything is fine. Many loved ones describe that feeling as worried, frustrated, or even helpless in those situations. They find themselves walking on eggshells, trying to navigate a heavy, unspoken tension within the relationship. Over time, these relationships can become strained when mental health concerns go unaddressed. Communication becomes more difficult, emotional distance grows, misunderstandings develop when someone is struggling internally but unwilling to talk about what they're experiencing. According to Derek Griffith and his colleagues from the Association of American Medical Colleges, men's mental health should not be viewed solely as an individual issue because its effects often extend to families, relationships, and communities. The decision to suffer in silence rarely only affects one person. The people who care about them most often carry part of that burden too, not because they don't want to help, but because it's difficult to support someone who's trying so hard to convince everyone, including themselves, that nothing is wrong. Because this issue affects more than just the individual, professionals and institutions have become increasingly involved about it. Mental health professionals work to reduce the barriers that prevent men from seeking support. Therapists and counselors often challenge the idea that asking for help is a sign of weakness. Instead, they encourage people to see support for what it really is, a resource. Schools and universities have also become more involved in mental health awareness. In an article published by King's College London, June Brown discusses how universities are working to better support male students through awareness campaigns, peer support networks, and accessible mental health resources. The goal isn't just to provide support once someone has reached a crisis point. It's to create environments where seeking help becomes normal instead of feeling intimidating. Employers have paid closer attention to this issue as well. Mental health can affect workplace relationships, job performance, and overall well being. Because of that, many workplaces have introduced wellness initiatives and employee support programs. Across all these different settings, one challenge keeps coming up. How do you help someone who has spent years believing that they should handle everything alone? There really isn't an easy answer to this once you think about it. You can't just build another counseling center or hand someone a brochure and expect deeply rooted beliefs to disappear overnight. Sometimes addressing this issue means changing the culture around it. It means creating spaces where asking for help isn't viewed as weakness, but as something completely human. The more I researched about this topic, the more one thing stood out to me. The reluctance of many men to seek out mental health support isn't just an individual issue. It affects families, it affects friendships, it affects schools, workplaces, and even entire communities. Understanding the perspective of all these different stakeholders doesn't just give us information about the problem, it helps us understand the people living through it. Sometimes the hardest part isn't finding help, it's believing that you're allowed to need it in the first place. Because the consequences of suffering in silence rarely stop with the person who is struggling. And perhaps the first step towards understanding the issue is recognizing that no one experiences entirely alone. Thank you.